Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Tracy Alexander. And coming up in today's newscast, Netanyahu fumes over an unprecedented recording leak from a confidential COVID-19 cabinet meeting.
אני לא זוכר בכל שנותיי כראש ממשלה שנעשה דבר כזה.
Get your space tickets ready. An Israeli hospital is getting set to blast bacteria into orbit to begin experiments for space tourism. And the Israeli organisation giving children with cancer long tresses of hope. In the detail, and that's what the Israeli Prime Minister wants to get straight. A memorandum obtained by the Times of Israel shows Benjamin Netanyahu's talking points for government ministers to help them communicate Israel's plans to expand across parts of Judea and Samaria. This as the Palestinians take aim, but for now say they're holding fire. Aaron Porras has more.
Palestinian Authority officials stoking the flames of citizens' unrest ahead of Israel's plans to extend sovereignty over parts of Judea and Samaria. He says violent clashes are not necessarily called for at the moment, as this would damage support for the Palestinian cause within the international community. But he goes on to warn that in the event of annexations, this might change. Meanwhile, advancing the move scheduled to start as soon as July 1, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has released a memo from his office, coaching Likud lawmakers on how to discuss and justify the plan. The memo argues that evacuating these settlements would be historically unjust and pose an immediate existential threat to the state of Israel. It also says that the Jewish settlements are an integral part of the Jewish homeland and identity. But there's one major blank spot in the memo around the creation of a Palestinian state, a main condition around Israel's West Bank expansion as outlined in the United States Peace for Prosperity plan. Since most Likud MKs are against this tenet, Netanyahu has repeatedly said that he would never recognize a Palestinian state under his governance.
Well, Netanyahu is not happy. The Israeli Prime Minister vowing it will never happen again after leaks to the media from a confidential coronavirus cabinet meeting. A recording was leaked to the media overnight of Netanyahu pushing for the Shin Bet's controversial digital tracking program to be reinstated to follow COVID-19 patients. Here's what Netanyahu said today.
אני מבקש קודם כל לפתוח באירוע החמור של הקלטה של ישיבת הממשלה שהושמעה בכלי התקשורת. אני לא זוכר בכל שנותיי כראש ממשלה שנעשה דבר כזה, לא מתוך ישיבת ממשלה, לא מתוך קבינט, במקרה זה קבינט קורונה, דיון עם ראש השב"כ, דבר חמור ביותר.
Now, the Shin Bet, for its part, doesn't want to see the program brought back, as Nittany Manson reports.
Fears of a second wave reaching a fever pitch. COVID-19 infections around the country are rising ever faster, with upwards of 1,700 new cases confirmed in just the past week. In fact, infection rates in Israel are sitting at nearly 300 new cases every day, and the WHO reporting the single largest daily global rise in infections on record too. But in spite of worrying numbers and calls for hospitals to prepare to reopen COVID wings, Israel's health ministry sees no need to reimpose restrictions anytime soon. The new health ministry director general, Chazi Levi, saying Israelis just need to remain vigilant in maintaining social distancing and wearing masks, adding that those with even mild symptoms should simply go get tested. At the same time, Levy also rejecting calls to fire his second-in-command for granting an exemption from self-quarantine to Israeli Cypriot billionaire Teddy Sagi, who attended a star-studded party instead. Deputy Director General Itamar Grado explaining his reasoning in an apology letter, which has since been accepted. And meanwhile, in a total opposite of new lockdowns, train services across the country are resuming Monday morning after months of being closed. In order to maintain at least some health restrictions, train lines will be operating at half capacity, with a maximum of 500 passengers allowed per train. Plus, travelers will have to book their spots online in advance. Also, no food or drinks allowed on your trip, as passengers will have to wear masks at all times, and those with a body temperature above 38 Celsius or 100 degrees Fahrenheit will be barred from train stations altogether. The death toll rising by 2 to 307, with the total infections hitting nearly 4,900, a rising majority of whom are younger patients. and yet a key program used to track the spread of COVID-19 losing support. The head of the Shin Bet security agency is reportedly against renewing its program of tracking citizens' phones. Despite reports, the Prime Minister wants to bring it back.
Now, the concern for some doctors is what they're seeing in patients that have apparently recovered from COVID-19. While the virus is no longer in their system, some people are reporting to suffer from an array of conditions months after being discharged from hospital. And joining me now to give us some further insight about this is Dr. Itzik Levy, an expert in infectious diseases at the Sheba Medical Center in Tel Aviv. Dr. Levy, a pleasure to have you with us. So give us a bit more detail here. What kind of issues are patients presenting with after having recovered from the virus itself?
Thank you very much for hosting me. I tell you, it's really very interesting because it is all so new to us. Every day we are surprised from all the things that we see in the patients. Of course, in the patients that suffered from a severe lung infection, let's remember, this is first and of all, a lung infection. They still continue to suffer from lung problems, from palpitations, from difficulty breathing. They have a very long rehabilitation period of regaining the forces, how to walk, how to talk, even sometimes how to sing without having those difficulties in breathing. In addition, many of them will suffer from neurocognitive problems. For example, difficulties in remembering, difficulties in concentration. Another part will suffer from peripheral neuropathy, which means they may have tingling or pain in their legs. Some of them, I saw also patients with what we call Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a more severe kind of neurological problem. So really, we can see many things. One patient just told me that she suffers still, 3 months after she recovered, she virologically recovered, still have some problems with tasting and smelling, like everything tastes for her like chicken.
Wow.
Don't know if she likes it or not. So we see a lot of problems, and we are also now in the middle of a research, like first we want to follow up to see what's reversible and what is not.
Certainly. Now, but Dr. Levy, this is reportedly even in patients with very mild symptoms. So why are we seeing these kinds of conditions?
Actually, the most honest answer is that we don't know. We believe that some of this is a problem in the blood clotting. We know that the two main things of COVID infection are the inflammation, severe inflammation, cytokine storm, etc. And the second thing is this blood coagulation problems. And maybe sometimes, very small blood vessels are clotted, and then you see the damage. And as I said before, we still don't know how much of it is reversible and how much may stay with the patients for a long time.
Now, briefly, Dr. Levy, is this unique to coronavirus, though? Can one come to have further complications, both on a cognitive and psychological level, or rather physiological level, with other infectious diseases too?
Yeah, of course, we saw it before, with CMV, for example. CMV is a virus, one of the herpes family viruses. It causes you an acute infection, while most patients just recover and even don't know sometimes that they carry it. Many of them will still suffer from fatigue, from pains 6 months and even more after the infection. In HIV, we see neurocognitive signs and symptoms in patients. So it's not, something which is unique only to this virus. What is unique for this virus is that we don't know still the spectrum of symptoms that we will see. We just now started to see the recovered patients. We are starting to learn this new thing. And I think it's because we still don't know. We don't know what will happen in 5 or 10 years. It is so important to prevent all of this with this simple thing. Well, you can see it. It's, just wear it every place.
Absolutely. Well, that instruction is certainly being echoed by the authorities. So thank you so much for that insight and giving us something else to pay attention to and a reason to stay safe. Thank you, Dr. Levy.
Thank you very much.
Well, if you're a space nerd like me, you'll remember exactly where you were when Israel tried to land its tiny spacecraft on the moon last year. It was an incredible feat to get as far as they got, and now a new mission is underway. The Weizmann Institute is looking to have its craft selected by NASA to launch towards Neptune's moon in 2026, with the task to find signs of life. It's down to the final 4, and the Weizmann Institute is one of them. And they've already received some $3 million towards the project, but only 2 will make it to the final cut for launch. And Professor Yochai Caspi is leading the team that developed the Trident clock, and he joins me now. Professor Caspi, first of all, congratulations. And tell us about this watch that you developed and how it's supposed to help you in this mission.
Okay, so I'll just begin with a correction. This is a team of scientists across the world. This is a NASA project, and we have one instrument on this mission, one of 7 instruments. And the instruments that we're developing, as you mentioned, is a very accurate clock that we will be using in order to make measurements of the atmosphere of Triton, the moon of Neptune. So what we'll be doing is sending a radio beam from the spacecraft to Earth, and when the beam is going to go through the atmosphere, it's going to be changed a little bit, and we will be measuring this attenuation with this very accurate clock that we're going to be putting on the spacecraft.
Unbelievable. So tell us a little bit about the oceans that you're expecting to find.
So Triton, the moon, like some of the other moons in the solar system, has subsurface oceans. What's happening is that the surface is very cold because they're very far from the sun. The interior is very warm, and they contain a lot of water. So in between, there's a layer of liquid water, and this is what there is on this moon. And the spacecraft will be measuring the thickness and mass of this ocean. Moreover, in some places, this ocean spills out. So we have geysers that are going from the interior out into the atmosphere. The atmosphere is carrying the material around, and that's some of the things that we will be measuring with this spacecraft.
And without it just being interesting, what are the implications of the data that you might have after the 2026 launch, and how could that affect us here on Earth?
Yeah, so it's a 2026 launch and arrival on 2038, and that's actually, it sounds funny, but that's actually a very fast route to Neptune. And what we will be learning is we will be learning about this subsurface ocean that you mentioned. It might even have life in it, like we have on Earth. We have life very deep in the oceans where there's no sunlight, and maybe there's a similar effect on this moon. In addition, we will be learning about the atmosphere. This is a very unique atmosphere that hasn't been observed before on any moon in the solar system. What's also unique about this moon is that it likely did not originate in the Neptune system. Right. It rotates in the opposite direction to Neptune, meaning that we're actually learning about an object from outside of the solar system. This will also be something new. So the combination of all these features is something very new that we're looking forward to.
That is incredible. We're wishing you the best of luck with that. Professor Caspi, thank you for that insight.
Thank you.
Well, we might be able to blast into space, but it's taking some time to work out how to help commuters get from central Israel to Eilat. But in one small step for man and one giant leap towards the approval of a train line could be just the solution fed-up travellers are looking for. It's Israel's most famous resort town, and for years, millions of locals and tourists have been waiting for a better way to travel south to Eilat. Without a personal vehicle, your choices are between the limited, long and crowded bus trips or catching a flight. But after nearly a decade since approving the initiative, Israeli government planners are getting started on a train line. Now, the first section of the line will connect Beersheba to Mishor Rotem via Dimona at a cost of 2.7 billion shekels. That's more than $780 million. Planners estimate that by 2030, between 18 and 30 trains per day will travel to the southernmost Israeli city, carrying 5.2 million passengers and hundreds of thousands of containers of cargo a year. There could be some obstacles though, since the budget is yet to be approved. Plus, don't forget the environment. Potential damage to the desert landscape also needs to be assessed. Well, when listening to stories about overcoming adversity, one of the most important factors for a person's journey is having hope. And that's what one organisation in Israel is giving to young people living with cancer. Zichron Menachem provides support for anyone under the age of 25 in Israel, regardless of religion or background, and also offers help to their families. And one of those ways is by collecting hair from donors around the world to make much-needed wigs for children and women who have lost their hair during cancer treatment. Yael Weisberger is a volunteer from Zichron Menachem, and she joins me in studio to tell us more. Yael, such a pleasure to have you with us.
Such a pleasure to come here.
Now, I understand that one of the first questions that comes up in children's minds when they're diagnosed with cancer is, will I lose my hair? Tell me more.
It's very interesting. I know a girl, she told me that the first thing that she thought about, not will she come out of it, not the treatments, not if it's going to be hard, hair. She's going to lose her hair. She's going to lose something that's so important in her future.
Right. And a lot about the way that you present yourself in the world, so it feeds into, I suppose, you know, your sense of self and your sense of identity. So what are then the reactions from women and from children when they receive the wigs that you're creating for them?
So when they get their wigs, they're happy, they're surprised that the wig is the same as they wanted, the same as it was before, because they want to look the same. They want to look like any other girl, any other woman. So they're surprised and they're happy, and suddenly they can go out in the street and not be ashamed.
So how does it work? Where are you getting the hair from? How are people even sending it to you?
So we have girls and women who donate their hair from all around the world, all around Israel, and that's the reason we can do all this huge project.
So if I wanted to donate my hair, are there certain things I need to know before sending it?
Yeah, there are a few things you need to know. One of them is you could actually donate hair that's colored. Most people think that you can't donate, but you could. You can't donate hair that's been straightened by chemicals, and you need to have 30 centimeters at least.
Okay, so you have to have very long hair to be able to send it. And when you're making the wigs, is it made up of many people's hair? What's the process?
So each wig is at least 7 braids. It's crazy.
Wow.
It has to be thick, it has to be nice, it has to be long, like it was before.
And how do people send their hair, say, for example, from overseas? How does it land in your offices?
So we have an address in our atal, and you could check on our website our address, and you could just send it.
And you're a volunteer at this organization. Tell us why you personally chose to get involved.
So I heard of Zichron Menachem. It's an amazing place. We help so many families financially. Every day we help with the kids. We help with the wigs. We do so many things that surround the family in any way they need.
And was there a personal connection that you felt that you really wanted to help these kinds of people?
My father, when he was a kid, he volunteered in Zichron Menachem a long time ago, so he told me about it.
That's
and
amazing.
It helped me.
Keeping the family tradition, doing beautiful things. Yael, thank you so much for coming and sharing that with us. Well, moving on now, Israel's official Twitter page is having a bit of fun with its followers, asking people to join the conversation around which countries users would like to see Israel strengthen ties with. The social media managers having a lot of fun with the responses, even having a laugh with those who are taking the task a little too seriously. Take a look. Done and done. Now, I find Israelis entertaining altogether, and those are just my friends and the people I meet on the street. So it goes without saying that the entertainment industry here is dishing up a smorgasbord of fun. And to bring us up to speed with all things entertainment and culture, I'm joined by our very own Emmanuel Kadosh. Emmanuel, what have you got for us today?
Hey, Tracy, so I'm just going to jump straight into it because there is a lot to cover. ABC has officially canceled the Israeli adaptation of The Baker and the Beauty TV show just after its first season. Now, the romantic comedy drama show was nixed just after its 9-episode freshman run. And fans and celebrities across America were simply not having it. A Save the Show campaign with a petition has been trending and has already racked up more than 130,000 signatures in an effort to get another network to pick it up.
Whoa, that is such a shame. It was such a huge hit here in Israel. It's such a pity that it didn't go the same way in the United States. So did the show just not have good enough ratings, or was there another reason for the cancellation?
So according to reports, the show had a, quote, tough time connecting with viewers, getting less than 3 million views a week, even though it was thought to be a good programming fit during the coronavirus pandemic. I mean, after all, what else were people doing other than binge watching TV shows? But either way, the show didn't get the viewership that ABC had anticipated, ultimately leading to its cancellation. But there are actually two interesting things here. The first is that the Israeli version of the show was one of the highest rated scripted series ever in Israeli TV history, which I can attest to. It's definitely one of my favorite shows to date.
Amazing. But I also heard that there is a lot of backlash actually coming from the Latino community there due to the cancellation, right?
Yeah, that leads me to the second interesting factor, you could say. The star of The Baker and the Beauty, Natalie Kelly, spoke out recently about the cancellation, stating that a show with a Latino cast is, quote, necessary during these times, and that, quote, ABC has made an extremely tone-deaf decision at a time when the public is marching in the streets demanding representation and diversity.
Oh, well, hopefully another network sees the opportunity in this show and picks up the series for another season. All right, what's next?
All right, so up next, shockingly enough, the coronavirus has been able to do what no war, natural disaster, or any other crisis has done for more than 50 years. And that is, are you ready? To put a halt on the stage performances of Fiddler on the Roof.
That is not where I thought you were going with that. What? I can't even get my head around it. What even is the world without Fiddler on the Roof?
I agree. When I read this news, I was shocked, just like you, but apparently the last show of the North American tour of Fiddler was actually at Detroit's Fisher, which was the same venue that the show was performed for the very first time back in 1964. The musical has been a beloved part of American musical theater since its debut 56 years ago and has been performed all over the globe, even in places where Jewish culture is virtually or completely non-existent.
Wow, and I can actually tell you that family members of mine have performed in the Australian production, not the national production. It was a school production, but nonetheless,
still,
it's part of the family.
Getting represented.
And now I understand there might be a new Fiddler on the Roof film. Any truth to that?
Right. So from what I've read, that seems to be the case. MGM is set to produce a remake of the iconic musical about the struggles and joys of Jewish life and will be carrying on many traditions. The original movie version of Fiddler came out in 1971 and actually racked up 3 Oscars.
Wow. Well, I am definitely looking forward to seeing this new remake of the film.
Me too.
Thank you for the update, Emmanuel.
Of course.
All right, well, on that sunny note, let's take a look at the weather forecast. If you're planning to take the long bus journey down to Eilat, you better like the heat. It's set for a low of 80 degrees Fahrenheit tonight. That's 27 degrees Celsius, and that's the low. And tomorrow, the southern coastal town is looking at a high of 103 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a whopping 39 degrees Celsius. Well, summer is going to be a killer looking at these temperatures. And now, before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel. Probably something many of us are feeling. But that's what Corona was all about, eating all the things. All right, well, that is it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.44 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Tracy Alexander, and thank you so much for watching.